Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're going to be doing an amp and two 12s in this 2016 Toyota Tundra. Now in this install we're going to show you how to remove the back seats to install a box. We're going to get our subs mounted up and install an amplifier under the seat. Let's get started. Alright, so here we are at the bench now. The parts that we're going to go with, first and foremost, is the amplifier that we've chosen. It's the CT Sounds 1000 by 1 amplifier. It is 1000 watts at 1 ohm for a monoblock. Now to power this amplifier, to provide current for it, we're going with this amplifier wiring kit that we will run from the battery to under the seat area, and then to integrate this into the factory system, because we are running the factory radio, we do need a basic line out converter to make that happen, which is the SNI 35 by pack. And up underneath here, to mount our amplifier under the seat, we do have a piece or a big sheet of ABS plastic that we're going to cut and mold to make work under the driver's front seat. So the first thing that we need to do is head to the car. We're going to pop up the seat so we can kind of start measuring how to cut and modify our ABS board there, so we get our amplifier mounted up. Alrighty, so what we've done is, with the seat now back, we went ahead and started making some test fits, and with our ABS plastic sheet we have come up with this design, this shape, where essentially we're going to snag the backside of the seat bolt. It'll go through there, and this will be sandwiched in between, and then we'll just do a little mount up here in the top hand corner. But for the most part, that one spot should be enough to anchor the amplifier mount down so it does not move. We already got the amplifier mounted to it. It's nice and sturdy. And then what we've done here on this end is we've created a spot for our line out converter. It's just going to be zip tied here. We'll have it down here versus up back behind the radio, and we'll show you why here in a minute. But we have a shorter set of RCAs that'll go from the line out converter into the input of that, and then these are anchor points for our signal from back behind the radio. So this is done and good to go. We can essentially go get this bolted up in the vehicle. Now, next thing we want to talk about is how to get signal to your amplifier. We showed you the SNI 35 in the package. This is an example of a T-harness that we usually build here in the shop. One end will take the place of the factory plug back behind the radio, and then the other end is where that factory harness was, and we'll plug it into ours, where essentially this just taps into the factory radio. There's tons of these on Amazon. We can link one here. This is another alternative where essentially go install this, and then your RCAs for your base amplifier will connect into those RCA outputs, and then you run those down to your amplifier. That's another option too. So at this point of time, we're going to go start getting this all mounted up here. Like I said, our line out converter won't be back behind the radio. It'll actually be down here on this mount. We just have this Toyota harness as an example. And we also don't have the factory JBL, so don't have to worry about integrating our signal into that whatsoever. If you have the JBL, generally you already have a factory amplifier with a factory sub. That's where you'd probably want to snag your signal. Okay, so let's head to the car and get everything. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and prepare our ground here. So if we take off this panel here and lift up the carpet, we actually see a threaded spot here that doesn't currently have anything in it. You may have a factory ground there, you may not. We don't, but it's nice and threaded, and we have found a bolt that actually threads in that location, which is perfect. And so we're going to clean it up with a brush. Alright, so now it's a nice clean location for our amplifier ground. Alright, so we got our ABS plastic mount in place with our amplifier. There's where it'll pass through the seatbelt bolt, just sandwiched in between here, and it's already looking great. Now we finished up our ground right there, as you saw. Nice bolt, we got that all in there. Clean off the paint so it has a really great connection. Nice and tight. So at this point we're going to get the carpet back into place. So that takes care of our power and our ground with those wire ferrules. This obviously isn't hooked up yet because our wire just comes out here. Now for signal, this is our 9-conductor cable coming from a T-harness we built previously back behind the radio. We'll cut to that section here in a minute where we'll show you how we get the radio out and build that T-harness. But again, if you use a pre-built T-harness, we'll link all those parts down in the description. Essentially, this is just speaker wire coming from the radio. Comes down here, and we have that going into our line-out converter. Well, we're adding our line-out converter just down here with those short set of RCAs, but we've matched up color for color from our speed wire, and so that goes in and makes it nice and easy. We also have a little extra length for a remote terminal wire, which is also bundled in here. Our greens and our purples are rear speakers, and we don't need those rear channels, so we'll just tape those and cap those off, and we're going to loom up the harness. So at this point, we can get our terminals all hooked up here, start getting the amplifier all buttoned up, and next we need to run our power wire through the grommet in the firewall up to the battery, and we'll show you how to do that here in a moment. But first, let's cut to our radio disassembly and assembly of our T-harness in case you want to build one yourself. Okay, so this is our T-harness. Now this is again, the Axis AX DSP TY2. This is if you were adding a DSP that you'd have to purchase separately, it would plug into this plug here, but we're not doing a DSP. We actually just want this harness for the T-harness side. It has the male ends and the female ends. It's like the Metris 70-1761, just basic Toyota harness that this takes. But there's a male end and a female end, and it's pinned with all your wires, even the wires that we wouldn't need. And it passes through everything except for our speaker wire, which we can bridge out our speaker wire. So what we're going to do with this harness is this end will plug into the back of the radio. It's from this harness, which we've already just kind of cut. This basically went straight on through, but this end pulling the signal from the radio will go down to the high level inputs on our amplifier through this speaker wire, and it's nice and color coded, which is great. So this will take the signal from the radio, send it to the amplifier. Our new CT Sounds amplifier will amplify that signal. And what's cool about this is we've already broken this one out and got the lengths we need. It has all our speaker wires here, so essentially we'll wire color for color into here. And with that all ready to go, one thing to note, we on one of our 9-conductor cables going to our amplifier is a blue wire. We tie that into this red wire. That is our accessory wire, so that'll essentially see 12 volts when the radio turns on. That's a perfect remote trigger for our amplifier. So we connect one of our blue wires to the red wire on our T-harness. That's going to trigger the amplifier to turn on when the radio boots up. But we can start getting this installed and start running this in the vehicle. We need to pop out the factory radio in order for us to make our connections with our harnesses. Now to do so, this radio needs to come out temporarily so we can access that wiring. We have a vinyl panel tool as well as a extension deep 10mm socket, and that's going to allow us to get the bolts needed. So first things first, we can pop down our panel below the radio. Just held on with clips. Just like so. Once that's down out of the way, we can pop out our heating and air controls. Also just literally held on with clips. And then finally, we're going to have some 10mm bolts to remove. They're up underneath the radio. There's 2 on each side. There's 2 closer to the front and then 2 further in the back, which is why having an extension will make your life a lot easier. Alright, so once those bolts are removed, go ahead and give it a tug on the radio. It should also just pop on out. So we're going to go ahead and put a cloth down just so we don't scratch anything. Alright, so just a little bit closer look into the dash here. So our female ends on our T-harness will go to the original plugs that plugged into the back of the radio. And this end, our male ends, will plug into the back of the radio. So at this point of time, let's go ahead and reassemble the radio, getting everything plugged in. Now run our power wire through the firewall up into the battery area and run this through an inline fuse to the positive post of the battery terminal. So what we're going to do is show you how to pass that wire through. Here's our battery. It's a little dirty, but we'll clean it up here. Here's a positive post that we'll need to connect our amplifier to. We'll want our fuse as close to the positive post as possible. Then we'll run our wiring down. Now that grommet has a little nipple underneath the main harness that you can cut off to pass through. This is what it looks like. It just sticks out underneath the main harness. We used a pair of flesh cuts and just cut it off. What that does is it opens up a pass through that grommet that you can run your wiring. Now up underneath the steering column is that hole that we can pass our wire through. Since we've cut that nipple off, we can actually see right into the engine bay. So we're just gonna pass our wire through that hole. All right, so you saw us pull that wire through the firewall here. Essentially, we got our wire here and fuse holder all mounted up in this location. We created a little spot out of ABS plastic left over from our amplifier mount, and we cut it, actually put a little nut on the top of that stud there, and it's a nice place. This is for the 4-channel, and this will be for our bass amp. So they'll go here and we'll actually get it all mounted into that fuse holder. We put a wire ferrule on our wire end here with a little bit of heat shrink. We do that to all our ends here just to help against corrosion and make sure there's a nice connection. And then we have a short lead that will go to that positive post here on the battery terminal. So we're just about done here under the hood. We just got to finish up making our connections. All right, so we got all our wiring done here into our fuse holder to the positive post. Now, of course, we did all of this connection when the negative was off the battery. Both our connections now complete and the amplifier hooked up and grounded properly. We put the negative back on the battery. We also added an extra grounding strap just because we're now pulling a lot more current than before, and want to make sure we're all grounded properly, especially to the negative post on the battery terminal. Yeah, at this point we need to tidy up the amplifier and start prepping our subwoofer install. Alrighty, so we got our subs all in. Got the speaker wire all connected. That just goes down on the kick panel to the amplifier there. Other than that, we're about done here back behind the seats. Alright, seats are all back in. Now we noticed with our box, in order for it to fit, we did have to pull out the factory deadening mat to give us the clearance we need for the seats to sit flush. So keep that in mind. If you have clearance issues, you have to pull that on out. Alright, so our amplifier is all hooked up. It's looking great here. We just need to do a little tuning and get the seat bolted down. Alright, so we got the seat all reassembled here. All tucked in there nicely. It's all here nice and clean. There's the amplifier. We're gonna make all adjustments with the seat in, which is super nice. Sub is there, and the sub doesn't touch, which is great. Doesn't touch the back of the seats whatsoever. So it's a perfect fit. It's really, really tight though. We also set our gains with the DD1 SMD, so everything is tuned perfectly to the factory radio. Now down the road, the plan is to replace the factory radio, go an aftermarket, so we can ditch the high to low converters and do a low level RCA from the radio at some point. But for now, factory radio's in. It's all playing great. Now if you have any questions on what we did here, go ahead and post a comment below. We did speakers here, we did a 4-channel amp, we've done quite a few videos worth of content here, so we'll link all those down in the description in case you want to see how we installed the 4-channel amplifier as well as speakers in the doors. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time. We'll see you in the next video.